Hey, welcome back for this week's episode. Before we jump in, I want to say that we're praying for anyone that's been affected by the hurricanes down in Texas. You guys are in our thoughts and prayers. And we hope everyone had a great 4th of July. I know we did. The Rest Brothers came down, and we did nothing but fished. And I did some bow fishing, and I had a heck of a time. But this week's guest is one of our Oklahoma own, Tess Maune. If you guys don't know her, she's a News on 6 anchor, and she covers a lot of the big stories in the outdoor world in Oklahoma. I'm not going to spoil it anymore. Let's jump in this week's episode.
They say hunting and fishing can be dated back more than 2 million years. Throughout the years, the historic angler and hunter has steadily evolved into the avid hunter and angler that we know and love today. Welcome to the Outdoor Defiance podcast. As you listen, you will hear comical stories, companies talking about their products, researchers talking about their research, and overall ways to help you become a better outdoorsman. Welcome to today's episode.
Well, Tess, thank you for joining us today. We're excited for this episode. If people haven't watched this, they see your face, probably everywhere on social media. You're holding big catfish, holding deer, anything in the outdoors. But we'll get into that a little more here in a little bit. Let's start off with how you're raised in that, or how you grew up in the outdoors, and how it got to where you are today.
A lot of people are surprised that I did not grow up in the outdoors, at least when it comes to hunting and fishing. I'm from El Reno, Oklahoma, which is just west of Oklahoma City. And I was raised by a single mom. I had 2 older brothers, and our love was sports. So I was a softball player and a basketball player. So my outdoor experience really, until I was in my mid-20s, was playing softball. And I did have one friend in El Reno. We would go out to her farm pond and we would fish. We'd use hot dogs as bait. And I don't think we ever actually caught a fish, even though I know that hot dog is a good bait and you can catch fish with it. But we were about probably 10, 11, 12 at that time and caught a fish. So that was really, fishing with her on her farm pond was it. And then out, in the outdoors playing sports.
Right.
And surprises a lot of people that I did not grow up. And I grew up in kind of a small country type town. And I knew a lot of people who, hunted and fished and noodled, but I just never really had the opportunity because no one in my immediate family did it.
Right. So when did you start getting involved and you're like, holy cow, this is a lot more funner than I imagined?
Well, the funny thing is that I always really thought it would be cool to try hunting. I didn't know anything about it, but like I said, I had friends who did. And I think I was just never brave enough or, didn't know if it was, it was kind of a father-son thing, honestly. And I didn't want to, interrupt that time together for my friends and their dads. But so I work at News on 6 in Tulsa, which is KOTV News on 6, a CBS affiliate. And in my 4th month there, we had a meteorologist. His name's Dick Farrow. He's former meteorologist. He's since retired, but he had the brand Fishing with Farrow, where he would take out new reporters fishing. And for me, it was me and Lacey Lowry. She's now in Oklahoma City. She's a news anchor at News 9, which is part of our sister station. And Dick Farrow was like, hey, I'm taking Lacey Lowry noodling. And I was like, I'm going too. And so that was truly the real introduction to the outdoors. We went to Lake Pawnee or Pawnee Lake, and we did not catch any fish. Well, I had one bite me, and then the guy who took us tried to catch it and it slipped out. So we didn't have any fish to show at the end of the day. But it was that experience that really just opened my eyes to the opportunities out there.
Now, was that with the Ledfords?
Yeah.
Yep, I know them well too. So I remember watching that episode, and
we had a blast. We had so much fun. And 2 weeks later, I had gone out on a different story. It was about actually, I think it was lake safety for a 4th of July, and I met the Keystone Lake manager at the time, or lake ranger, lead ranger. And I was telling him about it and oh yeah, we really wanted to catch fish. And he said, well, I got a buddy that could put you on some fish. And if you girls want to try again. And I was like, well, yeah, we wanted to catch a fish, we come that close. And so 2 weeks after that fishing trip, the first noodling trip, I went out with the ranger and his buddy who could put us on some fish, who did put us on some fish. And the buddy is now my husband.
Oh, that's awesome.
There you go. That's cool.
Yeah. I always say my best catch yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you pull any fish that day?
With the second time, yeah. My first fish was in the 20s.
Awesome.
There were 3 of us girls who went, and all 3 of us caught fish that day.
That's awesome.
And it was on July 15th of 2012.
Now, if I'm trying to think if I remember this right. Didn't you leave Pawnee and then like a week or 2 later, Ledford sent you a picture with the giant catfish they were holding?
So I think the giant catfish is how he and Dick Farrow hooked up. Maybe somebody had sent that picture to Farrow, and that's what got his mind, turning. Like, we should try this noodling story.
Yeah.
And that's how it all happened, I think.
So I was actually out the lake when they caught that, and when they came pulling up like all day, I was like putting my hand under little rocks. I was a little kid at that time, and putting my hand under little rocks, like, oh, I can't find catfish. And when they pulled that up, I remember like, maybe I don't want to do that. I think it was as big as me at the time, but it was a monster. I remember when they brought it all the way out of the water, I was like, holy cow! I think they ate me.
Big one. Do you remember the weight on it? I don't remember.
I know it's at least 50 plus. I mean, I've never pulled one quite that big, and I've pulled 55s and 52s. So heck, it might have been 60 or 70. Honestly, I mean, it was a monster.
It was really big.
Its body was filled out too. A lot of times, which we can dig into this later, but a lot of times their body this time of year is just they haven't ate that much. They've been in the hole protecting, so they're kind of scrawny. But this thing was as fat and as wide as it could be. Its head was huge.
It was probably a little earlier in the summer when he caught it, because we went. It popped up on my memories. It was in like June 25th or something that we went.
Yeah.
So he would have probably caught it a couple of weeks earlier for Dick to get all of that organized. But honestly, you said, we were little then at the time, but you were like, ooh, I don't know if I want to catch one of those. But now as a noodler, it's really more fun and easier to catch the big ones. Those little ones are just, they're little and they're wiggly, and you're just like, there's not as much to hold on to. Bigger fish. It's just easier.
Never fails. I find the 10-pound blue, like yesterday I was dragging my feet trying to find different holes. Like, we'd never been to Keystone, so it was pretty new to us. So, we rolled up and we were just looking for coves and just trying stuff to learn it. And I'm just dragging my feet, feeling for holes and stuff. And then like my big toes just in a fish's mouth, just like that little blue just attacks me. Never fails. I find those fish for sure. And Taylor finds the flatheads and stuff that he can sit there and pet.
Well, and those blues, flatheads a lot of times aren't going to, like, as you're working bank or whatever, they probably won't come up and bite you. But if you have a fish come up and hit your foot, it's most likely going to be a blue.
Yeah.
They're mean.
Yeah.
Yes.
So was it, before that trip, what was what was your more focus in the reporting and, journalism side?
Well, I always say, like, you can call me a fluff reporter all day long and I'm not mad about it. I really like sharing like good stories that make you feel good, that end, that just, and you're like, I feel good after hearing that.
Right.
But I was new to News on 6 at that time, and so I had to cover everything. So I was a beat reporter. I just general assignment, whatever was happening that day, I was covering. But once I did the noodling story and then met my husband, so I met my husband in July, and by October I was in the deer stand for the very first time, muzzleloader hunting, and I got my first deer. And then it was turkeys, and then it was hogs. I was just like introduced to this whole new world. And I feel like I've really been trying to make up for lost time ever since. So it was after that noodling story that really, like, I started covering wildlife stories, and and I wouldn't get to cover them only. I had to still do the other stuff, the news of the day stuff, but I kind of became the outdoor reporter, and I was doing stories that other stations and other reporters just weren't doing because, they didn't understand, they didn't have an interest in the outdoors. And I did, and I was starting to learn more and understand more, and I had my husband who was helping kind of, introduce me to this lifestyle. And I couldn't and still can't get enough of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of when I grew up. You know, it was deer hunting and catfishing on small ponds with my grandpa, and then deer hunting with my dad and brother. And we tried turkey hunting a little bit, but once I got my license, I mean, that was the open door for me. I started duck hunting that year. I went turkey hunting. I went to predator. I mean, everything. So I get that. It's like you couldn't get enough, and you're like, I need to keep going.
Yeah, and
All the
you
years I
stop,
missed time.
you stop living by like summer, spring, fall, and winter, and you're like noodling season, deer season, dove season, turkey season, spoonbill
Yes,
season. Like there are no more winter, summer, spring, and falls. It's
Yeah.
whatever
absolutely.
hunting or pursuing at that time of
Yeah.
year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's definitely addictive.
we just sat down with one of our good buddies and actually the podcast before this, and we started talking about like duck season, deer season and stuff, and it gets you excited even though you're in the middle of one of the greatest times of year anyway, because you can fish for whatever you want.
And it's the heat.
Noodling and stuff. I don't like the heat either, but it's one of the best times of year to be, especially if you're an angler. But it's hard to beat when it starts frosting and you're looking at deer out there in November for sure.
Yeah.
But,
Well, as you we've been in the summer season now for a month and a half, really. A lot of people start noodling. Some start early, like we'll do it in mid-May, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I put the wetsuit on, whatever. But by the time you get to this point and it's really hot, you really do start thinking about those cool fall mornings.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you have to say your favorite part of your job would be? I mean, I know that's a broad question for what you do, but
well, meeting so many different people. I mean, in 12 and a half years in Tulsa at News on 6, I've met just so many wonderful people, interesting people. And then really it's just telling stories. I love to meet somebody who's got a story and I get to, talk to them, interview them. I shoot a lot of my stories now. I do it all with my cell phone pretty much. I still work with photographers from time to time, but I really do enjoy doing it all on my own. So I do the interview, I shoot the interview, I log it when I get back, which is transcribing it. I write it and then I edit it. And it's just taking something and just creating this, I don't know, a lot of times it's a tribute to a person and the wonderful things that they're doing. And just to see that finished piece and to get a text message when it's over saying, I loved it. There's just a few things that are more rewarding to me than getting to tell those stories and to do it in the best way possible. And that's basically why I wanted to do the job that I'm doing. I just really, really love to tell stories in a news format.
You never really thought of it. You're kind of doing self-filming in the hunting world, in the news world. That's kind of cool.
Well, and I don't, I see, I know you guys probably do some filming out in the woods. Like, I don't ever really do that. I think that's like a totally different skill set that to me, I'm like, I just got to focus on the job at hand. And that is to make a good shot and not spook the deer or turkey or whatever it is, because that's a gift of mine. So I feel like if I were trying to self-film, I would just probably.
It's definitely different. You think about, so whenever we're getting better at it, every year we do it, we get a little bit better because we learn, we look at our videos and then we're like, okay, this is where we need to be better. But whenever you are sitting there, you're like, oh heck, I need to video that, like just little things that you can video to make, like, to tell the story. That's where we're trying to get to, is to really kind of have that story-like flow, not necessarily cinematic, but just tells the complete story of how that hunt went. Yeah.
And I have shot, I have Outdoor Life with Tess, which is an Academy sponsored segment. It airs right now. It was 4 in the spring, 4 in the fall, but I've gone out on deer hunts and turkey hunts and hog hunts. And I've filmed those of other people and of myself, hogs, because I think there's less pressure, you're hog hunting. But anyway, I do love to shoot outdoor stories. So like, if I'm not the hunter, I can do it, but I don't know if I could self-film. I think I would be really bad at that.
Yeah, it's been a learning curve. And, the best way I tell people is you have to shoot the animal twice. You got to get on camera and you got to get it down with whatever weapon you're using.
Yeah.
And I've taken it as an art, like you've said. I've taken it as like, I won one art contest ever in my life, and I'll never win again. I don't know how I did it, but I won one. And since then, I've never been able to draw again. But it's like I've taken the self-filming as my art to like try to critique what I do. And like Gunner, go back on what Gunner said. You always look for little things, but it's always the craziest things that you're trying to catch, and you sit there all morning trying to catch. Halftime, you're not even realizing you're deer hunting. It's kind of funny. Like last year, I was sitting there, and there's a hole behind me in a tree, and this little bird kept coming up and go inside the hole, disappear. It'd pop its head out, it'd fly out, and I spent probably 2 hours trying to get this bird on film going in this little hole in the tree, and I finally did. And after I watched it the first time, I realized I had some of the settings wrong for early morning, and it was blurry. So I was like, oh my God. So the next week I sat there and watched that thing, and I could tell you there's probably deer in front of me, and I watched that hole waiting for the bird to came back, and it was like 6 days later he came back and started doing it again, and I got a really good footage of him going inside eating. I don't know if making a nest or what, but it is the coolest thing to finally capture. So yeah, it's cool to sit there and like critique yourself and try to find the next thing, because everyone gets a video of a leaf blowing on the tree, or it's just something basic, and I'm always sitting there like, what can I get? And that's been one of the funnest things for me of all time, just to try to find the littlest thing to get. So
well, and I think as hunters, we all talk about the things that we see and experience in the outdoors that you just can't get sitting in your house, or at the ball field or wherever. And so you're trying to capture that and find those moments to show the public who may not know anything about hunting what it is exactly. Maybe it's just an armadillo like rustling in the leaves below, but it's something cool to be that close with these wild animals, whether you're pursuing them or not. It's just really, really neat, and it's great to capture it when you can, when your camera's not blurry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Something I've kind of noticed too is you start to notice things you normally wouldn't.
Yes.
You start to really pay attention to the finite details of like all the different things that are going on, like the tufted titmouse that's on the branch, or different kinds of butterflies coming in different times of year. You start to notice those things, and it's just cool for someone like me that didn't necessarily always notice those things till I started trying to capture them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Or the bobwhite. I just learned recently, like the bobwhite in my areas have like two different schedules, and it's fun to watch the two different coveys work this same area, and they've never ran to each other. In the last 3 years, I've started catching on them. One comes in the morning, and it's a smaller group, unless that same one leaves and comes back with more. But it seems like the second group has a lot more males than the first group, and it's just funny to watch them. They never come in through the same time, and they all almost walk the exact same trail, but they make different noises to each other. It's just crazy to watch, to learn them over the 3 years of being there. And it's the funniest thing to tell people, like, yeah, my bobwhites are going to come through tonight at 5:30, or right at daylight. They'll be in anywhere from daylight to the first 15 minutes, and they do. And it's awesome just to watch them come in, communicate with each other. And it's just, I don't know, it's just great to see it, especially because the bobwhite, are having a hard time in Oklahoma and majority of the U.S., but it's definitely cool to see that stuff.
That's what I was going to say. Well, how lucky are you to get to watch a covey of quail come through your place? Not everybody gets to do that. Yeah.
Taylor and I are lucky. I've got one pretty big covey, and he's got those two. And every time we see him, we're like, oh, the bobwhites, they're still alive, But yeah, we root for them for sure.
So speaking on fall mornings, kind of hard not to question, but are any of those deer over your shoulder yours?
So all three of those are mine. Yeah.
Oh.
I see the drop time. That's what I've been staring at this whole time.
Yeah. So that was I think it was my third buck to shoot. I got it powder in 2014, maybe 2014, I think. And that was on private land. And the 10 point above it was on private. And then this guy, this is my biggest. He's 155-inch non-typical.
Oh,
and
wow.
I shot him on public.
Really?
Yeah. We have a lot of public land. We love to hunt public land. As we get older, it gets a little bit more challenging with schedules like that. But when we can, we really like to get out and hunt public. And it's just a different type of reward because, you're kind of going out there blind and you can't bait, and you're just hoping that you're on the right spot, the right trail, the right scrape, or whatever it may be. And we did have some cameras up in this spot and had never seen that buck. And
Wow.
he came trailing a doe. And I was my husband set up a stand for me and a stand for him. And I just hear him say, shooter, 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 shooter. So I'm just like, I can't, I'm still a very like amateur hunter. And I'm still going to say I'm at that point, even today. And I mean, I couldn't even get my gun settled, but I got him.
Awesome.
So you said it was with a gun?
Yeah, it was black powder.
I kind of think it'd be fun to talk about, how you and Gunner kind of connected. It was 3, 4, maybe 5 years. Time loses me so fast that I forget sometimes. But Tess did a story over Gunner when he shot the new state record, and it wasn't until this year that you guys connected. So I'd kind of let you guys two go with that.
Gunner, when did you shoot that big buck?
2019, October, I believe 23rd.
So I know, I'm on all the hunting pages. I'm not sure if I saw it from your personal page or from it being posted somewhere else, but obviously like I saw the size of this deer and I was like, oh my gosh. And so I'm pretty sure I sent you a message and got your phone number and called you and had you give me all of the information. And then I did like a social media post. I just put it on Facebook and I might've put like it on, I share outdoor pictures in the morning. I might have shared it in the morning. I can't remember. I'm sure I did. But then I couldn't do the actual story with you because I anchor in the morning. So I don't get to go out and report as much. So I was like, Reagan Ledbetter is another reporter who likes to hunt. So I was like, Reagan, you got to do this story. And so then you and Reagan connected. And then he's the one who actually did the full story. I did like a a smaller thing on the news. But yeah, we had talked on the phone and then I followed you ever since on social media, like a little Facebook stalker I am. And so I kept up. But then I saw you at the Backwoods show this year.
Yeah, I like to make an appearance. My deer made it back on the wall this year. They didn't have it. I don't think they had it last year.
It was a year or two.
Year or two. They didn't want it up there. But, I tried to make an appearance anyway. And when I was walking by, I saw you and I was like, I got to go talk to her. I had got to see you in person yet. So I was like, I gotta go over there and talk to her. So, Abby was with me, my girlfriend, and we just started chopping it up about what we were doing and, how things have been and everything since the story and everything that happened. But
yeah, I was excited. It was funny because like we were standing there visiting and, we were at the booth kind of like to meet people and take pictures and stuff. And Gunner and I were talking and there was a guy and his dad and his son, like standing kind of waiting. And I was like, oh, they're probably waiting to take a picture with me. And they're like, they're like to Gunner, like, can we get a picture with you? And I was like, oh, that's awesome. I thought that was so cool. I was like, he is, you had that success out in the field with that big buck and, you've done positive things with it and you have a fan base. And I think that is super cool. I was like, that is awesome.
When it first happened, it was funny because some of those kids were afraid to come up and just come up to me. Now they aren't as much. And I'm happy about that. I like to talk to them all, about anything they want. And this particular kid and his dad, he just wanted a picture and he just wanted to say he had a picture with me and I took a picture with him. And I think that's super awesome. But
it is. Well, and you have like a humbleness to you and you're kind. You don't have like this arrogance that, you're like the greatest thing to ever walk in the field and hunt. And people respect that more, I think. So I love that you have kept that ability and the character that I think you were born with throughout that's very.
My dad, Taylor will attest to this. My dad always, even growing up, because I was a big sports player as well. I played football, baseball, basketball. And all growing up, my dad always tell me, act like you've been there, And I kind of act like that in the woods too. If like when I shoot, a nice deer, the target deer I want, Taylor will get more excited than me most of the time. And, even when I shot my big deer, Taylor and Tanner, who was with us at the time, I was kind of like, look, and they were like, oh my gosh. Like, they got probably more excited than me. and I had time to process it, but I definitely didn't, make the big uproar that they did about it originally when they first saw it. But that's just always been how I've been. Not necessarily a morals thing, like as far as the woods part of it. It's just kind of like a act like you've been there just because it was instilled in me, if that makes sense, from my dad. So
I like that. Act like you've been there. That's great.
Yeah, and like you said, I can testify on that. It's funny to me how many people are always like, "How much money did you make off that?" Or why didn't you not? He had offers to people were like, "Hey, if you don't tell a story and just you go through us, we'll pay you this and that." And it's funny, people are like, "That's dumb, that's dumb," and it's just funny because the whole time, like even, and I'm not saying I would have just sold the story one time, but even at that time, I was like, man, like I'm surprised. When's Bass Pro gonna call you? Because that's an incredible deer and this and that. But then it's just crazy. Over the years, I've learned like the bigger picture is everything has a reason. And it's you don't need to get all hyped about it. You don't need to get jacked up about it. And I mean you can be excited, absolutely. But in that deer's turned it to where we are today. This whole platform, it got us the starting fan base, and it's just been me and Gunner being able to share that story. And the moment we had that, and then just keep telling, just showing the person, like you just said, the kid wanted to take a picture at the beginning, they didn't, and now they do. It's just being humble and showing everyone that the average person can do it. And that's kind of, our message, like, hey, we're not experts, we're not anyone that you aren't, it's just, we're just humans, and we're the average guy just trying to share what we do in the outdoors. And that's kind of, that whole deal kind of testifies, and it showed me a lot of how I should be as a person too. So it's real cool to see that and to kind of live with Gunner through it. And so, yeah, that's kind of, I can definitely testify on him and Steve on how humble and very, how they will go out of their way to talk to the person that wants to talk about them or talk to anything. I mean, they can be like, hey, nice deer. And then they'll talk about fishing, and it's just great to just see that. So, yeah.
Swap stories. That's what the outdoor community likes to do.
Yeah. So I think we're living in a time that everyone thinks you need to be the next, big picture, and they forget about what brought them where they came from. And I think that's really cool to see. As a group, we've never really changed our boundaries or, our standards. We still love doing all this stuff. And so, yeah, I think that deer has been, and I've said it multiple times, and I'll say it till the day I'm under the dirt, but that deer has literally given us everything to start where we were, and it's been a blessing. So,
that way.
It's something you don't know unless you've heard us talk about it, but I actually hunt like a quarter mile from Gunner where he shot that deer. And so we hunted real close. It's funny to see people like, oh, don't you wish you'd get it? And I'm like, nope, absolutely not. Because I mean, just the humbling experience I've seen and experienced, I would not change it for the world, because it's been awesome.
Well, and it's kind of a shared success. I mean, if you were there, part of it, and it's awesome that you're more excited for him than you would be if you had got the deer yourself.
And another thing a lot of people don't know, and I think, I don't think we tell enough people this, but we also do several charity events. And, and that deer got us to be able to get donations from not just Oklahoma, like the people that followed us and sent donations and have been across the U.S. for our charity events, and usually it's someone in need in our community. And our community is, as in Oklahoma, we haven't gone outside of Oklahoma. And, it's been cool to see fans that followed us when Gunner harvested that deer. All of a sudden it's like, hey, what's your Venmo? I want to donate money for this charity you guys are doing, or charity event. And so it's been awesome to have that happen too.
I love that. Mm-hmm. Job well done to you guys.
So
like going back to what he was saying, like my two favorite things that have come from this were, three. I'll say three. The people I've got to meet, like you included, all these different people I've got to meet and, swap stories with, and that. The people I got to take with me on this journey, getting to share it with like my dad, my grandpa, Taylor, all these other people that got to do this with me was super cool. And the charity part of it, like us getting to do that. That's the third biggest thing that, we would have maybe have thought of trying to do this, but the amplification that happened because of me just slinging an arrow at a big deer did for the trajectory of, our group. Getting to do things like that is amazing to me.
Yeah.
Well, and through that, I mean, you've impacted people, you have fans, but you're also introducing people who might not have really thought about giving hunting a try. You've introduced them to that world.
Absolutely.
I think that, I mean, for what all of us do is the greatest part of getting to share the outdoors, is that we're getting to introduce people who might not think about it otherwise.
Yeah, and we've done a lot of stuff with kids, taking, kids that haven't had the privilege to have a parent or someone that take them hunting, and we've taken kids like that. We take veterans out with Operation Freedom Outdoors. We do all this stuff, and like last year or this year, sorry, geez, there goes my time again. But we went out to the veterans camp, turkey camp that we help run, and we got everyone a bird. I came home, I didn't hunt one day, and then I was just completely satisfied with what happened with that camp, and I was just like, hey, I can't personally experience what I just experienced, in the 2 days of hunting. Everyone got a bird, and then the landowners, nephews, they let us hunt their land for free. In return, we took him, and he got a big bird. So it was just crazy to experience that, and I was like, I can't top that. I'm done for the year, So yeah, it's been crazy. So, but it's enough about us. A lot of people, we can talk about, all the situations we've been in, and we're only getting that to share of, we're in that situation. And I know, Tess, you're in that situation because all the stuff that I've seen you do. And I want to say this too. I applaud you for everything you've done for the outdoors. And it's just been awesome to watch you since I just told you about a story I remember from years ago to now, and it's over the years. It's like, holy cow, here we are talking face to face. So it's awesome. And so, but yeah, thank you for everything you've done for the outdoors. And it's been great to watch you and to see where you are today.
Thank you.
So,
well, I would have never, 13 years ago, if you'd have said, like, Tess, you're going to be an ambassador for hunting, fishing, and noodling, I would be like, I'm not, what are you talking about? But it's been really just kind of the greatest blessing of my life, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's all kind of jump in the subject of why me and Gunnar are so red-faced, and kind of what we got together to talk about, and that's noodling. For you guys watching, I know you guys see me and Gunnar weekly, or you listen to us, but if you're watching on YouTube, the sun beat us yesterday, so it's not like we're blushing because Tess is on here, but the sun did take advantage of us, and I have felt it all day. But no, let's kind of jump into noodling and go in some topics there. So you said it was, did you say 13 or 12 or 13 years ago you started?
12
noodling?
years. 12 years. Yep.
So one of the main questions I want to ask, and I'll get it out now, what's the biggest fish you've pulled so far?
56.
Wow.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
I got that one two years ago, I think it was, in a pretty shallow hole. I mean, not a lot of, I wish I had like these really great stories for the big I caught, but it was a pretty easy fish to catch, and and we put her back in.
Yeah, that's what we like to do. If they're like 25 or even 20 and over, or have eggs, we just go ahead and just release them. It's just not worth it because they just get hammered this time of year. So that's our breeding stock. That's what we need to keep the years coming if we want to pull big fish and keep putting the big ones back. So that's something we always do too.
If you noodle a lot, like this year's a little bit different, and we can talk about that maybe later, but typically we noodle, maybe 5 times a week.
Yeah.
You're going out 5 times a week. I have a schedule that allows for that. It's just like, you just can't keep, I don't need all that fish.
Right.
Like a bass fisherman, you catch it, and then you throw it back in. So that's how I view noodling. It's fun to catch them, and then just to see them and let them go.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, something neat I really saw this year. People I don't know if everyone, let me phrase that, not a lot of people are doing, but I saw these people on Facebook, they're taking little zip ties and putting them on the dorsal fin and marking them and kind of seeing where they're going. And they pulled a fish a week ago and found it about 400 yards away in a different hole a couple of days ago. So in, 6 or 7 days, maybe a little longer, maybe a little shorter, I'm not exactly sure. That fish went 400 yards and found another hole. So it's pretty cool to see that. And I was like, man, I want to start doing that.
We've tried different ways to mark them so we can kind of track them as well. A lot of times there'll be fish that have a distinct mark anyway.
Yeah.
That you can see from like year after year. So we've caught the same fish from one year to the next.
Really?
A fish a few years ago, well, gosh, it's probably been 7 years ago, really. And we check the same holes continuously. We don't tear up the holes, keep them intact, which is why fish continue to go back as long as you don't rip them apart. So we check the same holes over and over. And this fish was in the same hole all summer long. I mean, I think we caught the same fish, and he was aggressive and fighty and bitey every time. I want to say I caught him 4 different times.
Wow.
In the same summer.
That's what Steve Gunner's dad, he had a fish like that. He caught like 3 or 4 summers in a row, and he knew it because it had a broken, one of his fins was kind of broken, and it went back together and kind of deformed. And he caught it for many years in a row and kept its weight. And I forget how big he got, but he was big. And then someone else went in there and posted a picture with it. So he didn't get to catch it anymore.
Oh, no, they kept
it. They pulled it. It is 72-pound fish.
Yeah.
No.
I know.
So what happened was the fish broke it, so Dad would catch him and put him back like every year. He just was checking. It was almost like a check on him,
Yeah.
And he ended up catching him one year, and he had a broken bottom jaw, I think.
Yeah.
And or he saw it in a picture, broken bottom jaw, and they pulled him, and he wasn't there anymore. But
so is he noodling your dad?
If I can poke him enough, he'll go out with us.
How is he catching that fish?
Oh, he was noodling when he loves to noodle.
Okay.
It's just hard to get him out now.
Okay, gotcha.
But he used to be, my gosh, dude. He was in his younger day, he was a very good noodler. He could dive in, like he would go in deep holes, people hookah for now. And he would go down. Yeah, he was a good noodler back in his day, and they would go noodle one day and come back and feed the whole neighborhood fish fry. And now he is like, oh, we got to put fish back, put fish back. But yeah, he doesn't do it a whole lot anymore. I wish he did. I try to get him out there. Me and Taylor bug him every year to go, but we'll see if we can get him out this year by the end of the year.
Yeah, and if he watches this, Steve, I just want you to know you're still a good noodler and you're not old. Let's take a break from this podcast and talk about some awesome products.
Hey folks, let me tell you about GritKnives. They're not just your average knife company. They're all about high quality, affordable, and unique products that'll make your outdoor adventures legendary. From limited edition pocket knives to rugged fixed blades and precision scalpels, they've got it all. Plus, their logo wear will have you repping the brand wherever you go. So whether you're out in the field or tackling everyday tasks, trust GritKnives to be your go-to for top-notch gear that won't break the bank.
Are you looking for some of the best sounding turkey calls on the market? Then look no farther than JAG Calls. Since 2022, Team OD has been using their calls and have had great success doing so. 2 of my personal favorite calls are the Mother Clucker and the America. And I mean, if it has a name like that, it must be good. Check out JAG Calls, that's JAG Calls, out at jagcalls.com. Hey, and while you're at checkout, use OD 2024 for a discount. Once again, OD 2024 for your discount.
Now let's get back to today's episode.
But no, so Tess, let's go over some stuff like, if you're going to a spot, kind of go over what you look for, kind of what are some of your favorite features that you look for. And, when you see it, you're like, okay, I got to go over there and try. If it's a new spot. I understand old spots, you kind of know, but.
Well, that's the thing is, we have so many spots that we don't have to work bank like we used to. And so we just continue to noodle the same holes year. But obviously you look for big rocks, is what I like. I do like to go into coves because it's calmer. I'm not a big, I don't have a lot of interest in going in rivers, although we are going to try the Canadian in El Reno this weekend. So not big on rivers, not big on creeks because they're just a little more snaky. So really, you're looking for rocks. You're looking for areas where there are good rocks. and then you just have to, I mean, you guys know you got to just get your hands and feet in there. And a lot of times I think people think you got to be right up against the bank, like right close to the water's edge, when really you got to kind of move out a little bit, and you're going to have to maybe like dive down a little, go underwater with your whole body to dip your feet and hook your feet into those holes to find the spawning holes.
Yeah, so I'm not a big on a lot of people, or I shouldn't say a lot, but some people go in brush piles on the river, and I have never, ever will be found in a brush pile. That's what.
Well, I did a story this year with the Williams boys who, they're the ones who win at Okie Noodling like every year. I think this was their 6th time to win. Jeez. And we went in a creek and we walked this creek. It was a private creek and, or private access to it anyway. Mm-hmm. And, those guys, they do it different. They're going into, the sand banks, and they're putting their whole bodies in there, and they're putting their whole bodies in those brush piles. And I just don't know. I love to noodle, but I just don't want to get snake bit or beaver bit. And I think those are good places for that to happen.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I felt one beaver in my life, and that was the last time.
Yeah, one is enough.
Yeah, no, no.
But people do. That's the main question that people ask me. Aren't you afraid of snakes, snapping turtles, and beavers? Snapping turtles, no, because when you go noodling, you realize like this is really not a place that a big snapping turtle is going to be. I mean, I guess that there are some situations, some holes that are big enough where one might, but that just seems unlikely. But snakes and beavers, they have to have air pockets, and I'm very, very cautious about what I'm putting my hand into. And if I see that there's any air in those holes, like I'm not going to go in there. Right. And really, I see the majority of snakes that I have seen out noodling were on the bank, not in the water. Yes. So I'm like, you folks who talk bad about noodling, you're the ones who are going to get snake bit, not me.
Yeah. I mean, and we're big creatures compared to snakes. Snakes don't really seek us, there's exceptions that one might come after you, but more times than not, they're just trying to get away. They're just trying to live their life and get away.
Yeah,
and
they don't want to either.
Yeah, and a lot of times, a lot of people think, they feed underwater, and a lot of times they don't. I mean, they can, yes, but a lot of times, they don't want to. They want the easy thing, and we're not going to be the easy target by any means. No, they're going to have a big fight if they bite one of us because we have a little bit of weight against them. So that's what a lot of people understand too.
The thing too is like I try to explain to people, we take people out occasionally. We're not guides. I get questions a lot about that. Like you guys is fishing. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's not what we do. But friends and family will take out. And a lot of times we'll have somebody who will be like, I'm not going to do this. I'm just here to watch. And then they'll see somebody else and they'll be like, well, that doesn't seem so bad. So right. I want to. But the catfish are in there guarding their space. So they're not going to let a snake, a beaver, a snapping turtle hang out with them where they're spawning. So when we go in, we check the hole and we know that there's a fish. And so we know that there's not going to be any of that other stuff in there.
Yeah. So for someone someone listening that hasn't ever noodled, kind of go in. So say if you hook your feet in the hole, I use that to kind of pull myself down because my legs are a little more powerful than my arms and it takes less air. But say if there's a fish in there, how do you approach the fish?
Well, so depending on the depth. So, even if it's not something, a hole that's going to, as long if my head's above water, let's say, I'll still hook, like you said, hook my feet in the hole, pull myself down, and then to keep myself down, because I want, I want my belly on the ground because right. I want to block as much of that space as possible to keep the fish from swimming out. And then, so I'm holding kind of myself with one hand, my left hand, and then I go in with my right. I keep my hands tight because I've had jam fingers if you keep them open. Yeah. So I learned my lesson on that. So I keep them tight, and then I just kind of pat around until either the fish bites me or I find it, because there are some that are really aggressive and some that are really docile that like you literally have to like force your hand in your mouth. Like, come on, man, just I want to bite me. Preferably. But so if they bite, I'm going to grab that jaw at the bottom jaw, and I'm going to push it down to the ground. to take away some of its power, and I'm going to slide it to the front of the hole, but I'm not going to pull it out. And as I'm pulling it to the front, I'm sliding my left hand along its gill, and then I'm sliding it into the gill plate, and then I'm shoving my arm, my fist into its mouth, and I'm kind of hooking my right hand with my left hand, and I'm hugging it to my body and pulling it out. That's how I do.
Right. A lot of people understand when you get that fish out of the hole, that's the real fight. Those things turn into alligators almost. It's unreal what they do, even the little ones.
Yeah, that's why when I get them to that, I mean, you have to, I mean, we take people out and we're like, you have to have both hands on it. Like whether you bear hug it, you know, I've done that some, but I feel stronger when I go up through, I don't go through the rakers. I go along the gill plate. So I'm not going into the rakers. I'm going along the gill plate, and I feel better to kind of hook that way. You know, I rarely lose fish like that. But if you come out and you want to be a hero with one hand, you're not going to have a fish take a picture with that.
No.
But so do you wear gloves, or are you a no glove person?
Oh, I wear gloves.
Me too. I'm not gonna lie.
Yes. I don't have anything to prove.
Yeah,
I want to catch the fish.
Yeah.
I got shredded one time when I was younger, and I never again. I was like, it's not worth it.
So my husband, I wear them out because anytime we go to a gas station, a garden store, a tractor store, whatever, I go to the gloves and I just look. I'm always looking for like the perfect noodling glove, because some are slippery, some are too thin on top. And so I found the best gloves I found. I know that viewers can't see, but I was like, I'm gonna bring my show and tell. So at Harbor Freight, the Hardy gloves, they're like $1. These are like the best. So I recommend those if you're going to use gloves. But so when I first started noodling, I was getting chewed up on my arms. I mean, it'd come up and those fish would spin as you're coming up. And I mean, it just get all over my forearms. And I had viewers who were like concerned. And I get bruises on my upper arms too from rubbing up against the rock while I'm working fish. So I get a lot of bruises on my arms, and sweet viewers concerned for my safety that something was going on in my personal life that wasn't. And I was like, I'm just new. So now I wear welding sleeves because it was just becoming too distracting on the news to have these scabs all over my arms from catfish.
Yeah, I usually wear long sleeves, which I didn't obviously yesterday. My whole back is burnt, but it's my shins. It's like you just be walking and then you find the rock that gets you, and you have to hit the ground for a little bit holding your shin. I was like, how did you even get there? But yeah, my shins always get beat up.
Yeah. Well, and that can happen when you're just like walking along, the bank, and then there's a rock. So I try to take like really big steps wherever I go, or kind of like, coast on my stomach throughout the shallow areas.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I always have like a noodling stick. I'm sitting there swinging it in front of me, trying to find like a rock in front of me or anything like that. I like going in with the stick anyway, just because I go in sometimes and I'll flinch kind of, and that just keeps me from flinching. Sometimes I'll hit that stick and I'll just come follow back behind it, and that just keeps me. I don't know what the word is, like
ready.
I don't know. I guess ready, or like more of like hold your water type, you know what I mean? It prevents just that slight, if a smaller fish can get, over my shoulder or something. That's just something I do.
I look at it as just like a little extra peace of mind.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to feel it out first.
I don't. I go in with my hand first. I cannot stand a stick. I mean, I use them on a digger hole, but usually I go in, and that's what, usually I go in, kind of going slow. And, a lot of people, the hole, a good hole usually open up at the beginning, and then it'll just get big in a circle if you guys are listening and never been noodling. And so I'll go in and kind of hook my hand to one of the sides and kind of go in, because a lot of times either they're facing the hole or they're kind of facing their head in a corner, using their body to kind of block the hole. And a lot of times, if I feel the fish, I'll back out, I'll come up to the top, or if my head's above water, I'll be like, hey, there's a fish in here, my feet are in the hole, look for exits, because that's a huge problem that we run into. Is if with especially newer people, if they're hurrying, trying to get in there, you know, that fish will, you know, sometimes feel frightened and get out of there like anything else would be if something's going to attack it. And, you know, a lot of times if you don't cover those exit holes, you know, that's one of the biggest mistakes I see is that's how they get out. And sometimes, like yesterday, we had a fish that had 4 exit holes and we had all 3 but 1 blocked, and he got out on us somehow. I still have no idea how, but he did. But no, that's something I do. That's kind of, I
Well,
don't
and
get attacked a lot.
once you know, I mean, if you go in, you find a fish and you know it's
Mhm.
there, then you really want to check around the hole to make sure there's no other, you know,
Absolutely.
before you start working the fish, because I mean, it's a sure shot that good chance you will lose the fish or won't catch it because it'll swim out of one of the other spots that's not being blocked. So whether you put a rock in front of it or you
Yeah.
keep that blocked
So,
up.
so do you prefer like rock bottom? Do you prefer sandy? Do you like to find the mud bottom on the bottom of the rock? You know, kind of what's your goal for there?
Well, I think whatever bottom has the fish on it.
Yeah.
But I like a sandy or kind of like pebbly.
Yeah.
I think is best. I mean, you can find fish in rock on rock holes sometimes, but I think they like to be in an area that you know, isn't mushy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they want a little bit of a more clay, harder type bottom, or with little pebbles.
Right.
That's what I have found.
Yeah. So the reason why we tried Keystone yesterday was our normal spot. It's really good, but bunch of zebra mussels. So we don't like to go get cut up. And if you guys have never dealt with zebra mussels, you're lucky because those things are razor sharp. Doesn't matter if you have jeans on or long sleeve shirt, they're going to find a way to get you.
Uh-huh.
And so we went to Keystone, and something we learned yesterday, a lot of the rock on rock holes weren't holding the fish. And I don't know if it was this a coincidence. And then once we started finding the sand, it was almost a guarantee we would find a fish pretty fast. So that was kind of cool I never really thought like that because where I'm from, it's always the little pebble bottom, you know, not too much thinking of it. But when you go to a lake that's nothing but rocks all the way around it, you kind of got to find out where they are. And that's what we had to do yesterday. We found a fish at the first spot, and then it wasn't for a while until we kept just trying to different areas, and all of a sudden we were on them.
Well,
So,
and it's, you know, when you're in like a hole that's kind of a sandier and you go in and, you know, it's kind of flat, or you could go in and the sand is pushed up to the front. You're like, oh
yes.
boy, they've been in there fanning, and then you just feel that dip of the
Yep.
bowl. And I mean, it's on there. You just, you know, either that a fish has been there, you can feel the bowl, or like he's about to come bite you.
Yeah. So do you have a story or a time that you remember that was like kind of frightening that when you got in one, you know, if it got, you know, like if it had your arm in a different position that you couldn't get it fully out, or, you know, if the fish wouldn't let go and you were kind of thought you were running out of air or anything like that?
So there have been a few times where I felt like, I think it's more in my head than actually happening, but where I felt like I was like, I don't know if I can get out, you know.
Yeah.
I always have. I've had a rock kind of collapse on me before. And that typically is what makes me most nervous on holes that aren't just like one big rock, but just, you know, pieced together or whatever. That makes me nervous that I could have a rock collapse in on me. But I don't have any just like terrifying experiences. I'm a cautious noodler, I guess. It's just been in the last probably 3 or 4 years that I would even noodle a hole that was, you know, 6 feet down or 7, you know, like, because it just makes me nervous. I start, you know, at the beginning of the summer, I can't hold my breath at all. By the end of the summer, I can go underwater for like a minute and a half, no problem.
Yeah.
You know, as I build up my lung strength, I get a little bit more brave in the summer. But no, I can't really think of anything that was just really scary where I thought something bad was going to happen. I've cut my hand and had to go to the ER a few times just from like rocks. So, but nothing too wild. I guess I should maybe be more extreme. I don't know.
No, it's scary. One time it was one of those holes you kind of go into and you kind of manipulate. Try to say the anemone part, you know, I'm finding Nemo there, but try to manipulate my body. And I finally got to the fish and I grabbed it. Well, then in my mind, I was ready to pull out. I couldn't get my arm out. And I mentally freaked myself out that I was drowning. And then I was like, oh my gosh, Taylor, you just got to roll this way and get out. That was one time when I shot up. I was like, when I hit the air or hit the surface, that's my only time I've ever really been freaked out, other than, I guess, one time, I don't know if Gunner was there or not, but I had a fish grab both my legs, and I was under a rock. Like, I kind of pushed myself under this rock, and it was all the way back the hole, and he came out and took both my legs, and I couldn't get my feet out. And he actually took my one of my water shoes that day, and I never got him out. I just let him. I was like, "Yep, you already scared me once. You can have that hole."
Yeah, I mean, there are moments where I think you have to have respect for water, obviously.
Oh yeah.
And you get down there and you're wrestling this fish, and you're like, "Wait, I got to breathe." And you have that moment where you panic. And I with my noodling sleeves that I wear, sometimes the fish will get stuck, and I know that, like, if I'm running out of air, I will push the fish back in and come up for air. Like, I can have it to the front, and if I think I can't get up to the surface, I just push it back in and put my feet back in and come up, and I'll go down and try it again later. But I've had times where I've been like kind of trying to like shake it off, run out of air.
Have you ever ran into zebra mussels?
So there are some. I mean, I've never been cut by zebra mussels, but I have seen some zebra mussels on rocks. I've had leeches.
Oh yeah.
Me. Come across. That's one thing people never really, or they're always surprised. I'm like, yeah, there are leeches in the lakes in Oklahoma, and they'll attach on you.
Yeah, but they're not like hard to remove. Everyone hears, back in you talk to anyone from the war, they're like, yeah, you always had to remove them and burn it with a cigarette to get it off. I've never had an instance with that in Oklahoma. They usually come off like a tick. So don't be scared if you heard that.
The next month.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
But yeah, no, we have a spot where the zebra mussels, you can flip rocks, and they're just, completely, you can't even see the rock. It's a whole bed of zebra mussels. And I've came out before and, jumped up on the boat, and Gunner's been like, and I'm not going to look down. He's like, your knee? I'm like, I'm not looking. I know I got sliced. And there's been a time or two that I should have probably went and got checked out, but I'm too hard-headed and I hate needles. So I was like, I'd rather just butterfly it and just go on.
Now, the zebra mussels, and it's just it's a matter of time before they're, in all of the waterways in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
It's not a cool thing, but I haven't had a lot of problems with them so far, thankfully.
Just stings. Like, you get cut and it's just like, ow, what the heck is that? You didn't even know you get cut. You look down, you're just bleeding. You're like, zebra mussel.
Now, my husband, he's been sliced by him a few times, but
they'll get you.
I guess I'm just lucky. I don't know.
Yeah. They always get you when the fish like shakes his head or something, or just like, or bending down over a rock. Like, you don't even know what happens until you are like, why? Who's bleeding? Oh, I'm bleeding.
Me.
Yeah. And you don't even know that's how sharp they are. They just, boom, just cut you. It's bad. But
I actually was fishing last week, and I was reeling in, and I came up. I felt something hit just a little bit peck, and you're always like, that was a fish. It had to be. And I reeled all the way in and came up, and there was a zebra mussel clamped on my hook. So I was hitting bottom, and I just caught it just enough to where he was open, and he clamped on my hook, and I brought him all the way up to the boat. I was like, holy cow. You guys are aggressive.
That's amazing. You couldn't do that twice.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say this too. Yesterday, we should have taken a picture of it, Gunner. But we pulled probably a 5-pound blue, but he had been attacked by a bigger fish. And on one side, he looked kind of shredded, but the other side, you can see the perfect like lip ring of being bit. And it was like, a good 9-10 inches wide. So whatever got him, I wish we ran into, because it was huge. And it's one of those things, I think about now. I'm like, man, I should have a picture to really show what it was. But it was awesome to see that. I've never seen that before.
Oh yeah, I've caught quite a few fish that have been, bit by a bigger fish, and I'm like, every time I'm like, well, where's that one?
Yeah.
Oh, like, what is that? Now, the craziest thing, I've caught 2 fish with no tail. One fish, one was it didn't have a tail, and it had healed over and was fine.
And
then the other one, it was 2 years ago. I'm like taking a picture of it and everything. It was one where I just swam to the boat and had my husband take a picture, and he was lifting it out of the water to get a weight on it. And I was just like, and he's like, what? And I was like, its tail is gone. And I mean, it had just been like, I don't know, it had just been chopped off. I mean, it was, we don't know, obviously, the story, if it was, somebody who had, was trying to keep it and cut the tail to bleed it out and it didn't work and it got away, or if it was a motor or what. But I have pictures on my Facebook. It's crazy.
Wow. Awesome.
So I actually caught it a second time and it was starting to heal. So I guess technically I caught 3, but one was the same fish twice, and it was starting to heal and look better. And then last summer I hoped so badly that I would catch it again to see, that it lived, but I didn't. It was real aggressive, so it seemed to be okay. And it was obviously spawning because it was in the same hole twice.
I wonder how hard it is for him to swim. He's probably not getting anywhere too fast.
He seemed to be figuring out. They're so resilient. It's watch the wildlife and what they can do.
That's like, the paddlefish, we pull them up and their bills are straight down, straight up, their heads are gashed in, and you're like, how are you still alive? But they're just, like you said, so resilient. Yes. I've never seen so many deformities until we started snagging. I was like, holy cow, what are y'all doing up here?
Of course, spoonbill, they take a beating, man.
Yes.
But they do.
It's a wonder why there's still so many.
Oh, yeah, I know it. But all right, here's the big question.
Okay.
You prefer blues or flatheads?
Well, with a blue, you're going to get bit. So if you want to get bit, blue is the way to go. Now, a flathead, I think flatheads are a little bit more fun to catch.
Yeah.
But blues are pretty fun too. It just, you kind of really have to like mentally prepare yourself for the bite of a blue.
Yeah.
A 5-pound blue cat feels like it can bite harder than a 50-pound flathead.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Where they're just so tough and so strong. I would say flatheads preferably.
Yeah.
But it's fun to switch it up every now and then and come across a blue. And you honestly, I feel like I'm a little bit tougher when I pull out a blue. Yeah, I did. But they're easier in that they bite you. But I think they're a little bit harder to get a hold of. Like their gill plates and stuff are smaller. They're a little more compact. So I think that they're tougher to manage than a flathead.
Yeah, and their mouth.
Yeah.
Even the big one's mouth would be real small.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I had a blue bite my toe one day, and it took the shellac nail polish off my toenail. Like that's how I was like, that's how hard they bite. They're so strong.
We always joke that when we take new people out, we're like, yeah, we'll get you on like a 10-pound blue first fish, So we don't want to deal with those 10-pound blues. We don't have to, but so we're always like, hey, like Tanner Rust, like first time we took him out, we were like, oh, we're gonna get you on like a 5-10-pound blue. Don't you worry about it. It's not gonna be that difficult,
And they're like,
and then he pulled a 2-pound blue, and it beat him up.
yeah, they had no idea. Yeah.
So mean. They're just the most aggressive, but they are fun. They are fun to fight with a little bit.
I think when you pull a big flathead, it feels like you're holding a dinosaur. It's those big the flatheads to get to that point are a lot more older than than a blue, and it just feels like you're holding a prehistoric animal, and it's just crazy to think. Like I wish like a deer, you can kind of get them aged. I wish with flatheads there was a way, to kind of really
without having to kill them.
Yeah, and that would be so cool to be able to age some of these fish, because sometimes I'm like, are you like 20 years old or are you like 50? It's like you have no idea.
Well, and over the years I've grown this like love and respect for catfish, especially flathead. And that's why it's so hard for me to keep them. We do occasionally with the much smaller fish when we know we're going to eat fish. Usually we'll try to look for blues if we want to eat fish. But I just have so much respect for these fish, and people probably sound so crazy when I talk about like my love for flatheads. I have the same feeling for spoonbill too. So I don't know. There's something. They're these ugly creatures, but there's just something sweet about them at the same time. Yeah. That's probably only a girl's perspective. I don't know.
No, it's the same. I love flatheads, like, and it's, even coming from being an angler, I love to catfish. I grew up doing it. And you never really catch a flathead. You can go out and have a good day and catch 30, 40, 50 blues. And you can go out for catfish and you can get skunked for 2 weeks straight. And then that's all of a sudden, boom. It's just crazy how picky they are, but how big they are. You think they're just swimming around with their mouth open everywhere, eating everything they can for how big they get. But no, they're one of the pickiest things there are.
For sure.
And it's and that's what I've built my passion off. I'm like, you guys just know how to get this big. And and it's like, I wonder how, in going back, I just always want to know how old they are, but I'm like, what do you eat to get this big? I've thrown huge perch at you, and it always has to be something live, I feel like, because every time I use a shad, a blue eats it. But it's just, I have a huge passion for them too.
Bait.
Yeah.
Live bait. Blue cats will eat anything.
Yeah, they'll eat whatever. I've caught them on hot dogs when I was a kid, caught them on, about everything you think of you use. And a flathead, no, they're picky. It's usually a goldfish or perch.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I definitely have a huge passion for flatheads too.
I'm glad
we kept one and couldn't tell but had eggs in it. And I mean, when Gunnar told me she had some eggs in her, I just felt so, I felt so sad.
Yeah,
She was probably 10, 15 pounds. I felt so sad. I was like, man, if we would have known, we would have, released you right away. But you just couldn't tell. And I was surprised at being this late that she still had eggs in her and didn't have them out with the male watching them at this point.
Uh-huh.
So I was definitely surprised about that.
We find females late into the summer still with eggs. So, I mean, it's kind of like, I guess, deer with rut. I mean, one might, breed later than the other. That's more of a population.
Is there anything else you want to go over?
Well, I mean, so the only thing I could think of here is the drillers have started a Noodlers weekend where they changed their name.
Really?
Yeah. So this is the 4th season, I think, that they've done it.
Uh-huh.
So they call it their alternate identity.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of these, what are they? Are they AA, AAA?
I think they're double.
AA, yeah. A lot of these teams will change their name for like,
right.
And then they'll have different, uniform colors and everything. Well, the drillers go to the Tulsa Noodlers, and they have Tulsa Noodlers weekend is it's not actually weekend. It's a Thursday and Friday this year on the 1st and 2nd.
Uh-huh.
So this year they actually have a Tess Maune bobblehead that give away to the first 500 fans on Friday, August 2nd at
awesome.
Noodlers weekend game. And when the folks came and asked me about like making a bobblehead, I laughed because I thought they were just joking. I was like, oh yeah, that's, okay. And they're like, no, we really want to do that. And so it's just been such a crazy journey to have gone that first time where we didn't catch the fish, to meeting my husband, to now really getting to represent noodlers across the state, help represent the way. It's an honor and a blessing, and just so crazy. I would have never in a million years thought that I would love noodling and hunting and fishing as much as I do.
Yeah, sticking your hand under a rock got you so far. It's kind of funny to think about.
But it really is. It's just, I mean, it's truly an honor to just get to introduce and to share the outdoors with so many people. I tell people a lot, like, with the news is a lot different than like an outdoor channel. I mean, the outdoor channel is targeting people who already hunt and fish. Right. I mean, those are their viewers. With the news, I get to showcase and highlight and share the wonderful things that you can do in the outdoors to a group of people who, may have thought that they weren't interested, and they see it and they think, well, if she can do it, I can do it. If he can do it, I can do it. And just kind of gives them a new perspective. And people think it's, very fascinating to see girls out there doing it. And I really am excited that so many women are becoming involved in the outdoors. And I think I was looking through your podcast. Am I your first female guest?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Our official first female on this podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, there's not a lot of people like out there, and if they are, they're bigger name. Or I'm not saying like you're not a big name. I didn't mean that in a way, but they're like huge names, and and you have to do it too. You got to deal with thousands of messages in your, of, hey, you want to do this, hey, and it's hard to reach out to people. And that's why, when Gunnar ran into you and he told me, hey, she said, we want to do a podcast. I was like, let's do it, because I was like, I told him, I was like, we better get a hold of her. I know she has to probably plan out 6 months ahead of time because she's so busy. So, yeah.
I'm just not as good as checking the messenger that you were sending messages on as I have two. So I check my professional page a lot and my personal page not as much. So I should have a phone number right away.
But no, it's awesome to see the females, start to take over and some of the outdoor stuff. And, that's kind of what another thing we wanted to do was, get kids and females involved, because the more people we can pull into this sport, it's not going to die off, and we are kind of a dying breed any way you want to look at it. But I feel like the last 4 or 5 years we made a push to come back on it because we're coming, I know a lot more people now that never expected being outdoors that are there. So it's great to see. Yeah.
It's neat to have people come up and say, oh, I saw you fish. And so now I want to take my son fishing.
Yeah.
And do it. And there's so many opportunities in Oklahoma and so many opportunities to learn. The wildlife department has lots of great programs for hunting and fishing. And so, there's no excuse not to get out and try and to learn a little bit. And even if you don't do that, you can go on YouTube and find out how to, hook or tie a hook up or whatever. Noodle.
Yes.
But if you noodle, for those who are listening who are thinking about noodling, my top number one piece of advice is do not go alone.
Yes.
With noodling.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. When even like yesterday, there's points where it's shallow holes, but we're still kind of spread out. And I was like, I'm going to inch over that way. Like, I know I'll probably miss a couple holes, but I just want to be close just in case something happens. Because, it takes one mistake, and, what does it take? But 3 or 4 inches of water to actually drown in, if not less. And you're usually, way out there. So just be careful. And that's with anything. That's if you're boating and bass fishing. Just be careful. You think it can't happen to you, but it sure enough can.
Yeah. You just have to be smart and just have a respect for whatever you're doing.
Yes, thank you for coming on. This was a great episode, coming on, talking about all these topics. And like I said earlier, thanks for kind of being a voice. And, I think about sometimes, when we get on the news, it's like the first, little bit, it's kind of a Debbie Downer. And I remember, watching with my grandparents when Tess came on, it was going to be something exciting about the outdoors. And, and that's where I've seen it, you always kind of add a little bit of the icing to the, oh, this is a bad side, but here's a good side. And then also, I've seen you get kids involved. You've mentioned, parents come up and say, hey, we've seen you, because of you, we're going to take our kid fishing. Thanks for being a voice for outdoors and being a female at that. Because, a lot of females aren't interested in this. And, and it's not the yucky, bloody, just, everyone looks at killing. But we as hunters and outdoorsmen and outdoorswomen, we're the reason why these animals are healthy and thriving because we have a respect for them, And I see that through you. And, everyone that I've ever talked to you about has great things to say about you. So thank you for taking your time. Thank you for spreading the word of the outdoors, and thank you for coming on for this episode.
Well, I appreciate you guys, except you made me feel a little bit old, and you're like, when I was a little
It wasn't that. I shouldn't say that. It was like maybe 12, 13, 14-ish.
No,
so
I think that's cool. I love to hear that, and I love what you guys are doing and the platform you're creating, and I just hope that you continue doing that and keep up the great work. You're doing wonderful, wonderful things.
Yeah, we'll have to get together sometime and do something else. We're Oklahomans. We got to stay strong in that. So, but no, sure. We'll definitely find something, whether it be another podcast or if you get a big deer this year or anything else happens in your life and you want to share it, here we are. So
I'm going bear. Plan is to go bear hunting this year. So hopefully I get my first Oklahoma black bear.
That'd be fun. That's a dream. That's a bucket list of mine.